Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to a chapter-by-chapter read-along of J.R.R. Tolkien's masterpiece, the Lord of the Rings. I'm doing this a little bit backwards. I've already done this for The Two Towers and The Return of the King. Now we're doing the first part of the book, The Fellowship of the Ring. And we are at a point now where our quartet of heroes, Frodo, the Hobbit, and Sam, his servant, and Merry and Pippin, who are all bearing the one ring of power, the ruling ring of Dark Lord Sauron. They're bearing it out of the Shire. Their goal is to make their way to the elvish city of Rivendell, to the elvish citadel of Rivendell. They don't quite know how to get there, and they don't know how they will get there, but they can't stay in the Shire, because the Black Riders of the Dark Lord are already out and about in the country, and they're dangerous, and they know the name Baggins, and they know that the ring has been found. They're trying to find it themselves, and they're not going to ask nicely if they encounter it. They're not going to ask nicely. Our heroes have made their way to Bree, to a village of Bree, and to the Inn of the Prancing Pony, where they have met a character named Strider, who seems at first a little bit ambiguous. He seems almost as threatening as the Dark Rider himself, but he claims that he's not. He claims that he can be of use to them, and that he'd be happy to guide them, and asks that they draw aside into a private room to talk about it, and Frodo agrees. Frodo says at one point that talking to Strider, says, "You have frightened me many times in the brief time that we've known each other, but not in the way that the servants of the enemy would frighten me. I would think that if you were an emissary of the enemy, you would seem fair and feel foul." And Aragorn just has to laugh, because, so what you're saying is, I seem foul but feel fair. It turns out that Strider is Aragorn. He is a much bigger character than we know now. We'll learn about it. He, of course, becomes one of the stars of the show. But he assures them that he will help to guide them. He knows all sorts of ways out of Bree. He knows all sorts of ways across country, and might be able to help them reach Rivendell safely. And they know that they need the help. They were expecting that they were going to be making this journey, going to Bree, going on the roads, all that sort of thing, with Gandalf. Gandalf has been absent. He has inexplicably not shown up when he said he would. So they're halfway tempted, all but Sam. Frodo's servant, Sam, is distrustful of Strider and says, "Well, how do we know you're the real Strider? How do we know you didn't kill Strider and just take his clothing?" And Strider, Aragorn, is approving of this. He's glad that these hobbits are starting to be a little more suspicious of the outside world, since the outside world is very suspicious of them, and gives Sam the only answer. He stands up a little taller, speaks a little more forthrightly. It's a moment that echoes the moment when Gandalf does the same thing to Bilbo earlier in the book, and tells them, well, the answer is simple. If I killed Strider, I could kill you too. And it's absolutely true. The hobbits are struck dumb for a moment, because they suddenly realize they're in this little room with a guy who's obviously a seasoned warrior. The innkeeper, Barleyman, brings up a letter to the room. It's a letter from Gandalf that has slipped his mind. It's just plumb slipped his mind to deliver a letter from Gandalf to this quartet of this hobbit that Gandalf told Barleyman weeks ago, was going to be coming to his inn. He writes a letter in haste. It's full of information. It urges Frodo to make common cause with Strider, and tells him that his real name is Aragorn. Quotes a bit of verse. "All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost." And assures Frodo that of a few quick instructions jotted in haste, one of which is very emphatic: do not use it again for any reason at all. The ring, in other words. Don't put it on your finger. Don't wear it again. It's a beacon to the servants of the Dark Lord. It's a beacon to everybody that has the senses to detect it. So don't use it again. You'd like to think that Frodo was already sort of resolved in that regard, especially since in the last chapter, putting it on was so disastrous, turned the whole of the bar room against him. But Aragorn agrees to help them, letter or no letter. He assures them of his identity, and he also confirms it because he quotes from the verses that Gandalf includes in the letter before he has seen the letter. says that those verses in his name sort of go together, and we're going to find out why. We're going to find out who wrote those verses. The author of those verses is well known to our main characters. But Aragorn also tells our heroes something else, something very stark, something that when I was rereading this chapter really hit me. He tells them, you cannot reach Rivendell without help. He's telling them that they are being pursued and that their pursuit is more than a match for them. He tells them the Black Riders are worse than you know. He says the same thing, a version of the same thing about Gandalf. In both cases, Strider is the means by which these hobbits are learning that the world is bigger than they thought it was. Because not only does he tell them that these Black Riders are worse than you think, they're terrible, you're afraid of them right now, but you're not as afraid as you should be. He also tells them that they don't know anything about Gandalf. They have no idea how great he is. He tells them that you're accustomed to seeing only his jokes and his toys. You don't know how great he is in reality outside of the Shire. Those notes are really nice and well done, and our heroes agree to take Strider's help and not to go to their rooms for the night. They are going to leave first thing in the morning. They are going to do as much as they can to get out of Bree. But going to their rooms when there are Black Riders about is a bad idea. And there are Black Riders about. We know this for sure. They are in the streets and alleyways of Bree. Probably watching the inn, probably thinking about striking that night. And that is a very tense way to end this chapter. That's what we do. We end the chapter that way, with our hobbits getting an ally in the nick of time. Imagine if Strider hadn't been there, and Gandalf still hasn't shown up. And these Black Riders are in the streets and alleys of Bree. Could go, if they'd gone to their beds, well, we're going to find out. The next chapter is called A Knife in the Dark, and we're going to find out what would have happened. So a very good bridging chapter, a very good, effective introduction of the character of Strider. We meet him in the earlier chapter, but here's where we really get a sense of an added character to the story, which is always fun. So we're gonna wrap this up and move on to the next one next time. I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.